Welcome to Play Pause Turn. In this podcast, we discuss all things to do with TV, films, games and literature. We give our thoughts on the media we've been enjoying, old or new, and comment on anything topical. Hi, I'm Jon, and I'm joined today by Alex. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Jon. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I am on the school holidays, which is probably why I've got time to podcast.
School holiday
I don't know
mode.
about you. But yes, no, I'm just a bit lamenting the British climate, which is struggling to be nice. It's just like you get teased with half a day of sunshine and then it just pours down.
On the plus side, at least we still have a climate. So
yes, true.
I think it's okay for now. But yeah, you're right. It's not helpful that it's this wet.
No, well, it makes days out planning difficult, that sort of thing. So
yeah.
I'd like to apologise for the long gap between episodes. We're back, obviously. We had a nice preview of The Flash, which turned into a discussion about Batman from Bobby and Mark in our last episode. But we aim to be a bit more regular. But I thought, as we are returning from a bit of a hiatus, I would really stay on brand here. And so we have a slightly different format for the show. And we're going to go kind of under the three areas of play, pause and turn. So we'll kind of bookmark our show today with those three areas. But first of all, Alex, how are you? You all right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Just trying to get through the weather, getting used to a new job and all the things that come with that. And just trying to find time for things, walking the dog, which has been a delight. But yeah, just keeping busy, which is good. So.
Yeah, I've taken the time to do a lot more cycling than I used to.
Oh, that's nice.
We might talk about that later on as well.
Ah, yes.
But the aim for today's show really is for Alex and I to catch up on what we have had time to do.
Yes.
So you might find in this podcast that there are a few things that everybody else has finished months ago, but we're going to talk about these things anyway and our views on them. So let's talk about play first of all. Now, I'm thinking it's 2 years ago now. 2021, so we were kind of it would have been June or July, so I think we had a brief hiatus where lockdown rules were relaxed slightly, if you remember. I hate to go back and talk about the pandemic, but I went for a trip down to Somerset, as I do every year with my family, and driving around in the ups and downs of Somerset, it's a very sort of hilly area with terrible phone reception. What I discovered, that was the time when pre-orders were opening up for the Playdate. And I forced my poor family to sit in a roadside parking bay in some small village on the coast of southern England to try on my terrible 3G on my phone to order the Playdate. The Playdate is a bespoke handheld console made by Panic, who were originally a games publisher. And they published games like Firewatch and Untitled Goose Game, games like that.
That's right.
And I was aware of this pre-order time, and it came at the worst time. I was trying to do it on my phone. Now, I made the mistake of trying to pay via Apple Pay, which I think was an issue with their servers. You didn't do that because you're not stuck in the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, I still had trouble ordering internationally.
Yeah.
I think there was. I think the issue was
Too much demand.
There was too much demand, like way too much demand, and I think there was also a problem with trying to order the cover.
That's right. I made the mistake of ordering the cover as well. That's what was the problem, I think.
So it kind of jammed up, and then literally within 5 minutes of trying to place the order a few times and getting frustrated, they'd already had 20,000 orders, and it was just their allocation for the run that they would be able to fulfill. So I joined the wait list, and I had mine for about 9 months, I think, and then you were a couple of rounds after me, weren't you? Yeah,
well, they did it in waves, didn't they?
Yes.
So after all the problems they had, because all the Americans basically had no problems at all, so they got the first 20,000. And I remember the Panic team apologising profusely about that, and they set up a second, third, and fourth waves, I think, by opening up basically the pre-orders later. Now I had to climb to the top of a hill near my campsite to do that, so I was a little bit behind you to get reception.
Oh, right.
And so I got the sort of the front end of wave 4, and you got the tail end of wave 3. I think that's right. Is it?
Yeah.
So you've had yours since before Christmas, and I got mine about a month ago.
Yes.
But I'm on a couple of the Playdate Reddits, and I'm still, I get lots of updates. People saying it's finally arrived. So my wave is still delivering at the moment, and wave 5 is coming up.
Wow.
For people who are listening who don't know what the Playdate is, it's kind of a double matchbox area sized, bright yellow handheld console with a black and white, high resolution 1-bit screen. It's black and white, with a hand crank that pops out and acts as an input, so you can actually sort of turn using the hand crank in the games. And it's quite a quirky little device, and it's designed to be a kind of a snack gaming, isn't it? Sort of bus stop gaming.
Yeah.
And again, it had problems during the pandemic because some of the parts it required weren't available and supply chain issues. Then they had issues with some of their circuit boards, and they've changed the chipset recently as well, haven't they? Is that right?
Yeah, I think
This is what I have and you don't have. I have a
yeah,
different
that's
chipset
right.
to you.
So you've got a different chipset to me. Not
Yeah.
that you would know because it doesn't change anything. It kind of it's one of those things that you might hear if you're in the sort of industry is like hardware is hard, like anything to do with hardware. And they were like, yeah, this is really tricky because this isn't their bread and butter. But I think they treated it so well in terms of how they've treated everyone, how they've communicated, they've been transparent where there's problems, and there seems to be a lot of goodwill in the community, and so I forgive them for a lot of things actually, because I'm like, do you know what,
They're just trying their best, aren't they?
they're doing their best, and there's been a pandemic and things that have got in the way, and underneath that is a really nice little handheld, which it's got its quirks because of its form factor and the fact
You've
that
got to
it's
go
black
into
and
it,
white.
yeah, knowing what to expect. I think.
Yeah, but the amount of fun that you get from it is surprising. It's actually sort of quite good.
Touched my Switch in a month since I bought it. I've been playing
Really?
this almost all the time.
Wow.
Some of the people who've been waiting for theirs or received theirs recently have had problems with it in terms of hardware. There's some failures. Some of them have had failures, and
That happens.
but again, Panic have been like, out of 8,000 delivered, 1 or 2 have had problems, which is a standard thing you'll get with electronic hardware. And I think they've been very good at sending out OTA updates for them, like bespoke for their device, or replacing the hardware within a week.
Good.
No, I'm with you. I think it's a lovely device. I had the first thing I did was obviously I get the catalogue games, the first 2 come through, and then I went onto Itch and bought a few games from Itch and sideloaded them. Went into the catalogue. The catalogue wasn't around when you got yours, was it? The catalogue was a new thing.
That's a new.
It's the App Store, isn't it? For
new thing,
for
and
Panic, for
yeah,
Playdate.
basically it also means you don't really need to sideload, because you'll find most of the apps that you could sideload through Itch, you can actually just buy from the catalogue now. So that's great. But no, it didn't exist at the time. So I learned about itch.io, and I bought a few games from there as well. And I just love the fact that they've been so open about it. They haven't, they obviously said, yes, we plan to do that, but we haven't done it yet. But they didn't say, you'll have to wait, you're not allowed to do your own, which is, so they really are like helping to build an ecosystem, which is nice. It's really really encouraging.
You can download the full grown Playdate SDK.
Yes.
If you are an experienced programmer, but you can also create your own little mini RPGs via their web version called Pulp, and Pulp basically is for people who can't or are less experienced at coding. And it reminds me a bit of Games Maker, which was the game making program in my day when I was sort of a bit younger. And I think that's really cool. So you can make your own games via a web interface and then sideload them to your device. And if they're good quality and you think they're good enough to go onto the store, I think you can submit them to the catalogue. I think probably the SDK games more likely will make it, because I do find that the catalogue games most of the time are a better quality than the sort of the itchier games I've seen.
Yeah, I think the catalogue's still individually reviewed.
Yeah.
Basically, I think you're given a slot. So you kind of said you're going to be in release 8 or whatever it'll be. So that's when it'll go. And then every time they do a new update, you'll be featured, which is really good. So that's quite nice. It's like being on the front page of the App Store all over again.
It's a very simple App Store. It's very pared down. It's not. I mean, I would say I tend to look at it whenever the new. So the device comes with a season of games that magically appear on your device 2 every week.
Yes.
I presume by now you've received all yours.
Yeah. So I've had all of the first season. I actually really like the season principle. Because it's one of those things that it gives me a reason to go back to it. And it makes it sticky. But also it's just one of those things. It's kind of, there's little moments of delight and in the Playdate, and I just think that's an area where they went like, no, we could give you all of them, but then everyone would play all of the games, say which ones are good, say which ones are bad, and then that will be it. They wouldn't have anything more to talk about. So I love the fact that like how they've done it.
I mean, I don't want to mention the names of the games too much in case people are waiting for one or expecting and give away the surprise. You can go onto the catalogue and look at them all if you want to spoil what's coming up. I would say it's hit or miss. There are some I think I play less of and some I play more of.
Yeah, me too.
But you don't really know until you try them.
And
some do use the crank, some don't. Some have kind of like now put the crank away. You probably heard earlier on I was turning the volume down on my device, but it's just the actual the menu system is so kind of sort of, I've got to turn the volume up here, kind of just satisfying, isn't it? And when you open and close the crank, it makes a noise.
Yeah, I can't hear that.
You can't hear that. Oh, it might be my mic sort of dynamically
I see.
Making it quiet, but I just love the feel of it. I love the sounds. It's just it's definitely a collector's thing, isn't it? I don't think it would appeal to all gamers.
It's got a really strong indie vibe. But actually, I think that's the thing. It's not. I think there are some things that you end up would go, yeah, they're indie, but they're kind of a bit pretentious, and I just don't get that from this at all. And I think that's what's nice. Like there are a couple of games that I enjoy on it. Including, now I don't think it's really a spoiler, but because it's actually in the trailer, is the time travel adventures.
Oh yeah, the cranks, was it?
Cranking one.
Yeah, I'll look at the name of it now so I can. It's not really straight away that one. It comes a little bit later on.
It's Cranking Time Travel Adventure.
Oh yes, Cranking presents Time Travel Adventures, and it's made by the guy who made. Oh God, I'll turn it off. Katamari.
Yes, he's a well-known game designer, isn't he?
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, and so the thing is, it's what's good about that is its simplicity makes you want to play it, doesn't it? And yet there's so much complexity to it because of how it's done.
It's infuriating at times as well, and I feel sorry for him because he always gets kicked in the nuts by his girlfriend.
I gave up at a point. I think it was like level 40 or something.
Yeah.
But because it was just some bits were just too hard, and I part of me wanted to go and find out what I should be doing, but the other part of me was like, no, I don't want to. If I can't get it, I can't get it.
And because they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're free. I think perhaps the price of the device includes it. Yeah. Includes it. I mean, when we ordered this, it was £185. It's now retailing for £199, and if you order now, they're saying probably by the end of this year or January, February before you'll receive it.
Yes.
So there's still a bit of a backlog of them delivering them out. I have to say one thing. Obviously, these aren't spoilers because you can buy them on the store. But I think the game I've been playing the most and enjoying the most is Bloom.
Oh, okay, very nice.
It's kind of like Playdate's answer to an Animal Crossing or a Stardew Valley. It's very simple, and it's kind of a text-based adventure, but not quite. There's a bit of growing of plants in it. But you're a young Japanese girl who owns a florist and is making her way through life. And a lot of the story is told through text messages.
Nice.
But you have to also grow plants to earn money to pay for things like your rent and so on. And it's all real time, so you play a little bit each day. It's like a little diary you go back to almost.
Nice.
I like that because that's making me return back to the device every day as well.
I've got one more that's on the catalogue that I like playing as well.
What's that?
It's called A Balance Brew, and
Oh yes, I've not played that one.
you basically riding a unicycle, and your
With
job
the crank,
is
that's
with the
balancer,
crank.
is it?
Yeah, the crank
Yeah.
is about balancing, going forward and back, and your job is to ride the unicycle all the way to the barista to get your coffee. And it's just again another thing where, and there are a few like this where the crank is a unique method of controlling, but it's so intuitive that you end up going, "Wow, why hasn't this been done before?" And it just makes it. It's a game that wouldn't exist anywhere else. So I think it's even the Wii, I can't really. I can imagine the Wii working, but I just don't think it'd be as much fun. That's the thing. I think this is such a unique method of control.
I mean, what's nice about it is if you want to put your own stuff on it, you can. There is a game, I can't remember what it's called now. It's not the same name. I'm holding it up to Alex now. It's a bit hard to see because.
Oh, okay.
But there's quite a. So it's actually got Tetris on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
now,
cool.
The Tetris game got taken down, I think, by Panic, because obviously you can change the theme, and one of the themes is basically the Game Boy Tetris screen with the music. But you can change that to kind of like a chill theme.
Oh, okay.
And it changes the music in the background as well.
Nice.
And I think I found that on a Reddit somewhere, because they're PXZ files, aren't they? These.
Yeah. There's a file format. I can't remember.
If you can find a file format, you can just sideload them, and it's as simple as uploading the file, like a zip file in the olden days, the zip files, to your account, and then unpacking it and installing it via the website. It's a really easy process to install games, and so this is the problem, I suppose, with being in India, is that some games like this Tetris clone can get away with it because it's very hard to stop people putting their own things on it.
Yes,
I think. Obviously, they're doing due diligence by not selling it on their store, but that's something. If you are an enthusiast, you can put. If you can find them, you can put them on. Which I think is really clever.
And I think honestly, it's one of those things that yes, there's obviously challenges with that, but honestly, it's like I feel like that just shows that it's got sufficient interest and sort of momentum behind it. It wouldn't
even now.
Yeah, if people wouldn't be this, creating these things if it wasn't compelling to play. I'm really, really pleased for them. I think they've done a good job.
So you can get a case for it, and I might wait till payday and get the case and just see when it arrives.
Okay. Interesting.
Did you get a case with yours?
No, I didn't. It's in the drawer downstairs. It's one of those things that is perfect for commuting because you have bouts of I'm not doing anything, but I don't need to see my phone. For those, that's when it's perfect. But then I've started driving into work, so can't do it as much at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm probably taking it with me to the campsite because what is good about it is it is really good outdoors.
Yes.
In light.
Yes.
I mean, in sunshine. I mean, you do wonder, it was designed by a company based in California. Maybe they were a little bit, skewing towards people in sunny climates. But it is really good. It's very poor at night. You can't see anything. I mean, I've got my lamp next to my bed on if I want to play at night with it, which annoys my other half. But
it's really quite hard. It kind of puts you off almost.
Yeah. It's not backlit, so just bear that in mind if you're thinking of getting one. They've also planned to release like a clock radio dock type thing. It's not really a radio. It's a block that I think has a speaker in it, and a pen holder, which and it sort of the whole thing snaps magnetically to the front of it, so it looks like a clock radio.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some games you can get on it and on the catalogue, which give you different styles of clocks on the front.
Nice.
And alarm clocks and things. So I can see them being a market for that. I don't know how they manage it on the front screen, but
they also have
lovely.
They also have a tool called Mirror that enables you to put it on.
Oh, that's right.
Put it on a computer if you want. Which I've not tried, but actually that may be a workaround if you do it at night, just to get.
Well, it's really good for streamers and Twitches and things, isn't it? So you can show off the games.
Yeah, really good.
And it has a facility for taking your screenshots, and you can just take them off the device itself.
Nice.
Because you can plug your device in via USB-C, which is why I think the mirroring works so well.
Yes.
Because USB-C is a good
right.
fast communication format.
Yeah.
And you can take the screenshots off, and they have a kind of, again, a charm to them when they're expanded into a high def screen because they're very blocky. aesthetically, I love it. And the games are fun and brilliant. I am very pleased with it.
Yes, good. I'm
very happy.
That's the main thing, isn't it?
I do have a bit of a handheld handheld device fetish. That I've got so many different handheld devices. So, yeah. Let's move on.
Watch out.
So I'd like to talk. Yeah, I'd like to talk about Jedi Survivor, which is a game. I think. Have you completed it?
I haven't completed it. I have got about 2/3, maybe half to 2/3 through it.
Okay.
And then I stopped because I was also playing the DLC of the Horizon Forbidden West DLC at the same time. And then I kind of got to the Tears of the Kingdom, and then I put it down. I haven't picked it up yet.
Okay, so that's interesting because I think I stopped playing Tears of the Kingdom to finish off.
Oh, interesting.
Jedi Survivor. Yes, I have completed it.
Cool.
And I think, I did think about. I mean, I did for a while aim to try and get the platinum by finding all the collectibles and things.
Oh, okay.
But because I enjoyed it so much, but I've kind of stopped now because there's so many other games to play.
Yeah.
I was a bit bemused. I don't know what you know about this, about the kind of the initial response to this game, because a lot of people, I think, did you play it on Xbox?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of people who played it on PC had a pretty bad time. I think it was a little bit broken on PC. I don't think the PC version was quite so stable.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really good time with it on a PlayStation 5. I didn't have any issues. I think maybe the game shut down once in the whole time.
Nice.
Which might be a little bit of a kind of a symptom of the build from the PC. I did notice a little bit of frame rate drop now and then in the big, lots of things going on the screen. And I would say my only criticism visually is I think for a next-gen game, the quality of some of the modelling and the polygon modelling of our character and so on was a little bit it felt a little bit lower quality than I expected. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you spin the camera around Cal, he's kind of grainy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But to be honest, I mean, you play looking at his back most of the time anyway, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Go on.
Sorry, Karen.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it plays. It looks like a cross-gen game, but it's actually a next-gen only game, and I think that's a bit disappointing, but it's just as far as they could get in the time. And
well, it's an open world as well.
Yeah.
So open world games will always have slightly less control over its fidelity, I think, than games narrative games on rails and so on. But that's by the by. I mean, the environments look fabulous, and the opening sequence, which is as always is the kind of the tutorial getting used to your control sequence through the innards of Coruscant I thought was stunning. I really enjoyed the story. I think I enjoyed the story more this time than the first game.
Okay.
And I love the character. The characters are all from the first game, give or take, aren't they, as well?
Yeah.
And I think, did you read the bridging story as well, the bridging book?
Yeah, I had it on Audible. Yeah. It was really good.
Book, didn't you?
It kind of it was. I'll just look it up. No, it was great, and it kind of really.
It was good, I thought.
Really helped me get into it. It was. Oh, do you know what?
Was it Battle Scars?
Battle Scars. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars. So this book basically takes the Mantis crew on kind of like with Cal on a kind of a revenge tour of the galaxy, trying to sort of basically hit back at the Empire in all the ways they can.
Yes.
This kind of chip away at all the Empire's work.
Yeah.
And on the way, things are revealed, and I can't remember the guy. Is it Grease?
Yes,
the
Grease
guy,
is
the forearm guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So Grease loses an arm in a situation that could potentially be caused by the other crew. I don't want to give too much away. And you'll see in the game that his arm has been replaced by a prosthetic. So there are features in the current game that kind of reflect what happened in the story. Now, I think that's great if you've read the story. I wonder how people who aren't so into the universe feel about that. I don't think they care too much because it was not a major thing. But in the book you see how Cal gets some of his scars on his face that you see in the game as well. I don't know if I think they had to be very cautious about how much from the book they brought into the game, because there's not much in the game, is there, from the book really?
Not really. There's a couple of bits where it touches, but not very much.
Yeah, which is fine, because obviously if you haven't read the book, then it doesn't spoil the game for you.
Yeah.
But I thought the in terms of the gameplay, I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy the whole. I mean, I love a lightsaber game. I love a Star Wars lightsaber game, and I thought. That was great. I don't know about you, but I've not used the pistol at all. I think it's a weird option. So you've got in the game, you can have these. It's basically the game is a From Software style game for people who can't play From Software games. So it's the same kind of Dark Soulsian kind of mechanic where you save at a meditation point, which is what the fires are in the Dark Souls games, and that meditation point essentially lets you rest, recoup all your energy and your health, your force energy, and then saves the game, but also resets all of the enemies in your area.
That's right.
And so you've got to take that risk. Do I keep going without as much health, but not have to plow through all these bad guys again, or do I go back, reset, have another go, knowing what's going on, and risk dying again and again? And you can pick up all the things you drop if you go back to the spot where. I think the enemy that killed you is glowing yellow.
Yes.
You can kind of battle him to get. So, I like that format. I'm not going to talk about it today, but I have started Elden Ring.
Oh, really?
And Elden Ring is so familiar because the format is exactly that, but much harder.
Right.
And so, maybe in another podcast we'll talk about Elden Ring, but I haven't played much of it, to be honest. Just enough to be like, oh, this is interesting.
I've got desire to play that.
I really liked it. No, well, I want to try it out because it's meant to be very good.
Yeah.
But time, isn't it?
It is.
I really enjoyed it, and I think you should finish it, Alex. I think you'll enjoy.
I will. I'm not that far away.
Yeah.
So I just need to put some time aside and put Tears of the Kingdom down, which we'll talk about in a minute, and just get on with completing the story. So.
Good. Okay. Well, hopefully you'll get time to play that then and enjoy it.
Yeah, I hope so.
And we can compare our final. I think there might be more than one ending to it as well. Actually, I'm not entirely sure.
Interesting.
I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have to wait and see. So let's talk about Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes.
On the Nintendo Switch.
That's right.
How far have you played into this? I think you've played a bit further in than me to flip the table.
So I am. So there aren't. To use the wrong name.
It's not linear, is it?
No, it's not linear in any way.
No.
And I have done like what I would call like 1.5 dungeons, or what they term dungeons. They're not called dungeons, but you'll know as you go through.
Do you mean the temples?
The temples, yeah.
I don't think it's giving too much.
No, that doesn't go that way, to be fair, because you don't know what the temple is until you get there. So
till you get to it, yeah.
And in the meantime, the other part that I've realised is I am one of these people that plays things on easy mode. Please don't hate me, but I just life is too short for me to devote loads of time. I understand
completely.
And sometimes I'm just not that good. It's like it's fine. So I was frustrated because I was like, where's the level? Where's the difficulty setting? Which of course has never existed on a Zelda. No. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I died quite a few times, and I was like, right, I won't do that again. And then I was like, okay. So I then spent quite a bit of time looking to get more hearts, which is one of the measures of things you need to do.
Yeah.
And get a bit more stamina.
Well, health,
get more health.
Gives you more health.
And also then get more green stamina, so you can go further and climb higher and things like that. But the thing is, what's nice about it is that if you don't really want to battle loads of people straight away, you don't have to. Okay, there's a whole new section of the game that you'll find out about when you play it. But if you don't want to do that right away, you don't have to. You can literally play the game how you want to play it. You could spend the whole time going around trying to find, Korok seeds, which are the same thing as in Breath of the Wild. And you could literally just spend your time doing that, and that would also be fine. So it's kind of it's so freeform. It's so liberating in a way, and it's one of these things that I just keep coming back to it, even though I'm frustrated about it, and sometimes I kind of go no, I'm going to play something else, and then I sit down, and then I get the Switch controller up, and I just start playing it, and another hour goes. And
do you play it handheld or on docked?
So I play it docked on the TV, and I've also got I play it with my Xbox controller because
right, you've got the 8-bit do.
You can get a little thing that goes on to make it work.
Yeah, 8-bit do that, don't they?
That's it.
I've got one of those.
And I was quite impressed because I also bought a Starfield controller for Xbox, which I'm very much looking forward to. And then I was like, I was just sitting there, what am I doing? And then I thought I'd really like a Pro controller for the Switch because I do spend a lot of time with it being docked. And then that's when I found out that you can get this little adapter that makes it work for Switch as well. And that's just great. So I'm really, really pleased with it.
Isn't it funny because a while ago you thought you were close to selling the Switch, weren't you?
I did sell it. I ended up buying a new one.
Did you sell it?
I did.
Did you buy an OLED one?
I did. To be fair, I think this is one of the things that Nintendo can do that other consoles can't seem to do, because I've bought a Wii about 4 times because I've bought it.
It's the games.
Played it.
It's the games.
Yeah, it is the games, and then you end up saying,
so
I'm not really using it now. Okay, I'll put it away, and then it's back again, and you're like, what do we do with the Switch? Oh, we put it on eBay. Oh, right, okay, and I just end up going, okay, I'm going to get it again, and most of the time it's second hand when you get it back, but there's something about Nintendo that just makes you want to just go, I'll do whatever I need to get to this game that everyone's talking about, and it's brilliant. But anyway, I'm loving Tears of the Kingdom. I'm
enjoying.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say. I'm enjoying the new mechanics of the game.
Yes.
I thought I wouldn't. Obviously, a lot of these mechanics were bandied about in the trailers, and so people are aware, like Ultra Hand and Auto Build and so on. I was a bit cautious, a bit gutted, really. I thought, oh gosh, they're turning it into like Minecraft or Fortnite, where you have to build things whilst you're running around. But actually, I think they're brilliant. I think because quite often, I think I mostly use them when you go through the shrines.
Yes.
Because they kind of subtly leave things lying around and say, well, you might want to use these to solve puzzles. And I for me, the shrines are my favourite things at the moment about it. I've played less than you, and I have to confess I've dropped off a little bit. I've stopped playing it whilst I fiddle with the Playdate. Right. But I have a Discord of games biz people who have all completed it already. So I've got a whole bunch of content there I can refer to if I get stuck. Nice. And some of the things that they've been building, and some of the things I've seen on YouTube that people have been building,
YouTube
are unbelievable.
They're insane. They're insane. The ones on YouTube. The other thing is they're very funny. There's plenty of like, oh, I wonder if I could build this. Well, you can if you've got enough of. Oh, you've done it already, right? Wow, okay. And it just there's so many things that you just kind of go, okay. And
things to get used to, like the Zonai devices, which I haven't quite got my head around yet properly. Which is battery power, and
I still use them in a very simple way. I think, like everything in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a mechanic behind it that you need to get before you really get the benefit. So, I've understood how to make like a powered glider, and I've understood how to make like a powered vehicle with wheels and stuff. But one of the challenges with those is you only have a limited battery, and so you've got to make it last longer, otherwise you kind of keep stopping. And so these are all
you can upgrade your battery.
That's right.
Can't you? You have to go. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but there's a certain region you go to this, and it gives you tips.
They're all mechanics that you have to get your head around, and once you play that for enough times, and I think that's what gets you. It
blows your mind.
Yeah,
because the designers are aware of this, and they're aware of the emergent gameplay, and they have filled the world with opportunities for people to fiddle, and they allow it. I mean, there was one person who found a way of pulling off a strut from a structure that could turn. He could basically make himself like a proper, fully working Lockheed jet from scratch, or something like that. I can't remember, like a Top Gun plane, like an M16 or whatever they are, and F-16, M16 is a gun. And it's those little, like, people just find little, like almost glitches, but I would imagine the developers are aware and allow, if that makes sense, because they're just, it's constant good PR for the games, isn't
They
it?
could have.
All these videos.
This is it. They could have limited. Well, even little things like there's that ability to fuse anything to anything, and they could have made that like very specific. They'd be like, right, you can use these 6 things, and that's it. But no, and instead of that, they've just said, "Oh, I wonder what a mushroom connected to this shield would do. It should do this. What about an apple? Oh, okay, an apple will do that. What about a frozen steak? Frozen steak.
I like the eyeball.
Yeah.
The eyeball means that it becomes, the arrow can seek out like a heat
That's
seeker.
right. Well, they've obviously designed some bits,
So
but
clever.
there's other pieces where you end up going, so like shield surfing, which is something you can do. If you get the triggers just the right, you can jump onto your shield and just surf around.
Which is good in the sand.
It's really good. And then they went, well, what happens when you've got a fuse device? And it's like, that works too. So literally, like, frozen steak is one of the best ways of shield surfing. And you think to yourself, they knew this. They must have known this because, again, it's not a mistake.
They must have playtested it to hell
right.
with their team to figure this out.
So it's amazing.
You've also got the ascend ability, and I think later on in the game you get, I don't want to spoil it too much, but you get other abilities as well.
Yes.
But the ascend ability lets you, I mean, I enjoy Breath of the Wild, but the climbing now and then got a little bit onerous. Because of the nature of this game, there's more verticality in this game than even before. This ascend ability, where you can essentially, if the right materials above you, you can basically swim through the rock of the mountain above you, or in wooden structures you can go up in certain places as well. I've discovered, and that's really good because quite often I forget about it. I forget I can use that. A number of times I've climbed up a mountain and thought I could have just gone into one of the caves and gone straight to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I will get back into it. Again, it's time. I've got a bit more time than you at the moment, Alex. But it's fitting everything in, isn't it? Really,
it is. It is a bit, and I think like that's one of the challenges, and like spending time with your family and all that kind of stuff as well. But I think you need to have little diversions, little things that you enjoy, and these kind of games are that for me.
I have, and I'm not going to talk much about it, but I have been playing quite a lot of Modern Warfare as well.
Ooh, okay.
Because I have a group of friends I play with every Friday night called the OAPs, the Old Age PlayStationers, and they're all my sort of age, all older. One of our players, Tade, is 86.
Oh wow!
And quite often, by about 10:30, we all have to shout down the mic to wake him up because he keeps falling asleep with his mic, with his controller. But I've enjoyed. I mean, it is complete nonsense for me. That is therapy because the game itself is mindless. But it's shooting the breeze with friends. It's stress relieving. I am way too good for my age, and that's quite funny as well. I've been playing so much of it. When you get this sort of muscle memory and intuitive lock on, and it's fun. And I'm a bit of a sucker for all the DLC, so I'm a bit of a whale when it comes to Modern Warfare. Although it's not a free to play game, I say to myself it's the only one I will use.
Nice.
The battle pass and some of the cost skins. So it's the only one I do because it's the one I've chosen to do. I won't do any other game. I know people who've shell out for battle passes, and it's we are the problem. this whole industry of DLC and kind of slightly cashing in on content. But I do, for me, I have to mention it because I have been playing a lot as well recently. Modern Warfare 3.
Yeah, that's
it. 3? No, 2. It's Modern Warfare 2. I think 3 is coming out soon. I can't keep track.
Okay. How are you feeling about the Microsoft acquisition?
I think it's a bit of a concern. I think Microsoft has spent a long time buying a lot. They've spent billions on companies already as a way of trying to become the leader, and it's a battle against Sony, isn't it? Really,
trying to keep up with Sony's exclusives.
Well, if they haven't, with all the companies they bought, like they bought, all the Bethesda game companies and so on, I think buying another one's not going to help, and I think it creates problems for the consumer. And I know Microsoft have have said they're going to put Call of Duty on every console.
Yes.
But we already know, don't we, that Sony have agreed only to 10 more years of just Call of Duty. So there will be no more Overwatch on PlayStation after Overwatch 2, if there is another Overwatch game.
Possibly.
Games like that, I think if all goes through as they promised, personally, for me, it's not a problem. I can just play Call of Duty on the Xbox. But I think it will cause problems for some gamers.
Yeah.
I think they need to slow down. I think they're too big.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is Sony's kind of defined the rules on this a bit with their exclusives, and I think the problem is that the constant feedback that you get from people trying Xbox is, sorry, dude, but you just don't have the exclusives that I want, and I have to, you don't have Spider-Man, you don't have God of War, you don't have all these things, and it's must be really frustrating.
Well, they've got Game Pass.
Well, this is where I have more faith in them about that.
It's a brilliant option.
Because I think Game Pass is one of those defining things that, if it's done well, actually encourages you to play something that you wouldn't buy. And it's also literally driven Sony to beef up their PlayStation Plus product. If it wasn't for Game Pass, that wouldn't have happened, because they've got no desire to do that. You can clearly see that. Nintendo have obviously opted out completely, which is up to them.
Well, yes and no, because I think if you go for
you do
the family option, you get they give you freebies, like you got the free DLC upgrade for Animal Crossing.
Oh, okay. So they're still trying. They're trying bits then.
You get a couple. It's nowhere near the same as now. What I find really interesting is Xbox and Microsoft have announced this new tier system to their Game Pass recently as well. So you've got this thing called Game Pass Core now, which is kind of more like the lowest tier of PlayStation Plus, or what used to be Xbox Live Gold.
Yeah, so it was always Xbox Live Gold, and it was always the cheapest way to do multiplayer, because multiplayer used to require you to. That was the only reason you would pay them the monthly fee or whatever it was. It wasn't that much actually. It was like $30,000 a year or something when I started it. And that's why you would have the gold thing, and then Game Pass arrived, and obviously they want to move you up to Game Pass, and I think they left it for a very long time just humming along, and I think they've just kind of realised that, like, if it doesn't provide some more content, then it feels like a cash grab.
The thing is, they've got. I mean, if we look at this now, so it's $10 a month.
Yes,
it'll probably be the same in the UK. And with that, you get 25 titles from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, and other content partners. And I'm looking through them now. Among Us, Descenders. I mean, there's some good games here. Fallout 4, Dishonored 2, Doom Eternal, Halo 5. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, The Elder Scrolls, State of Decay. There's some good games. If you've never played them before, they're good games. Much like if you get PS Plus Essential and there are games on there. But for most Xbox players, there's no way they'll go with this tier.
No, I think it's there to encourage you to go
kids
for,
being
for Ultimate.
Xboxes by their parents.
Yeah, totally.
Like that.
This is I'm not buying you. I'm not paying for the expensive one. What's the cheapest thing? And then you go, okay.
So we've got 4 different tiers now. You've got Core, which is $10 a month, and that gives you the multiplayer and the catalogue of 25 games and a few discounts as a member. Yeah. You've then got what's called Console.
So
that's $10.99 a month, gives you more games, new games on day one. Member deals and discounts, and then there's kind of a parallel one, which is the PC one, but the PC one also includes EA Play membership.
Yes, because they have an agreement on PC for that.
Yeah,
and then there's the Ultimate, isn't there?
So the Ultimate is everything basically. You get the PC games, you get the console games, you get EA Play membership. I think because I don't know about you, but my Xbox, which I've hardly touched all year. Is the one where you pay a monthly fee for Ultimate and the cost of the console. I think it's $28.
Oh, really?
A month
Okay. I paid outright for the console, so I just
Yeah,
paid them the ultimate price. But
yeah,
what I did was I loaded it up with. At the time, there was a loophole where you could basically get
yes,
3 months of live gold for like a tenner or something like that, and then you could load up to 3 years worth of those onto your account. And then once you'd done that, you could upgrade that to Xbox
for about a
for
quid or
about
something
a
ridiculous.
pound, and it would take
Yeah,
those months. So what I have now is it's paid up to 2025, which is great. Obviously, it's a workaround, but it meant that cost me about
yeah,
it cost no, it got about 2.5 years for about £100, which is not bad.
it's good. It's good.
And
I
that's
mean, I think
great.
I would imagine this new tier plan must be a reaction and somehow a solution to that problem.
Yes, they've now stopped that.
So
Yeah,
no one can do that
no,
workaround now, and we would imagine this kind of fragmentation of the tiers is a reaction to that.
yes.
Obviously, like yourself, there's some gamers that are going to be there for another 3 years, but it makes sense, I suppose, in that respect.
Yeah, I honestly think
They're
it's
probably hemorrhaging money for that.
yeah, but
You
it is
know,
a lost leader to an extent because they're still behind Sony, and
yeah,
um, but I think they've now got to a kind of a tipping point. So while
sure,
it's nice that they're getting Activision, um, there isn't like, oh, I must have this particular title. Whereas like getting Bethesda was such a big thing because of the
yeah.
titles that come with that. So I kind of feel like they probably should be done by now. They should just, now they've got the selection, they can encourage the Game Pass offering. And then it comes down to like, I think what they have in their head is their Games Pass will compare better than Sony's PlayStation Plus. And whether that's true or not will depend on which games you like.
It's very hard. It's very hard as a long-term PlayStation user
Mhm.
for me to see massive value in the tiers
Yeah.
because a lot of the games, and I would say the mid tier of PlayStation is the best value
Yes.
for what you're paying, and I have been tempted. But I haven't. If I'm paying it on Xbox, I'm not going to pay it. I have enough of a backlog of games to not worry about needing games to play. If that makes
I think
sense.
there is a limit. Like I ended
Yeah.
up saying a while back, I'm only going to pay for I'm only going to pay for Xbox's games
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
paying for both games on both platforms seems silly because I'll get most of the same because they'll be cross-platform,
Yeah.
and then I'll get a look at the exclusives. So for now, that's how I've done it. But it's really hard. It's like the
But
competition
can you
wise.
see now why exclusives are so important? Because that's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to buy the exclusives and so forth,
But
have the
and
hardware.
this
You
and this
see?
is ultimately this is a challenge because it's good for business to do this, but it is bad for the consumer. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you end up going, okay, well, it's going to cost me another console, and for those that can afford that, they're paying it,
That's great.
and
Yeah.
so the other party is going, great, I've got extra sales, so I do get it. But there is a point where I kind of think, like, it would be really nice if, like, there was. So one of the things that happened with some Bethesda titles was that they were released exclusively on PlayStation for 12 months. So, like Deathloop, for example, came out on
Yeah.
PlayStation first.
It's a
But
great
a
game.
year later, when that contract finished, obviously it was now owned by Microsoft. It came out on Microsoft as well on the Xbox, and
Is it on Game Pass? I think it
it
was,
is
wasn't it?
on. Yeah, it was on Game Pass
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I don't mind if it's a timed exclusive because sometimes I'll be like, all right, I'll come back to that when it arrives.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the fact that if there'll be lots of people that just pick one, probably PlayStation, and then they stick with that. That's their choice. That's what they've made, and
Yeah.
and then they have less choice, and that's the bit. It makes me want to get a PC to do more PC gaming, because at least in PC gaming there's a little bit
Steam
more
Deck.
edge. Huh?
Get the Steam Deck. Get the Steam.
Get the Steam Deck. Yeah, I'm not,
If I was going to go down the PC front route, that's how I would do it. I think, to be honest. I know you like your graphics, don't you? But I would go down the handheld route.
I am
But there you
tempted.
go.
Part of me wants
Yeah,
to wait for a second gen Steam Deck,
yeah,
because while I really would pay like £400 or 450 or something, which actually it is in the sweet spot. A part of me thinks like if there's a second gen one, I would jump on that because
so annoyed. Yeah,
yeah,
they would support the old one as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to get anything else game wise out of that cost, it's going to be the VR2. That's what I want to get
Oh,
next.
okay.
But that's a luxury that I can't afford right now.
No, it's
I think we need to move on.
yes.
So we hit our three titles. So let's look at Pause, which is our area of TV and films.
Yes.
Where shall we start, Alex? Let's look at Ted Lasso.
Well,
You've been watching Ted Lasso, haven't
for
you?
me, so firstly, I've had Apple TV on a trial, 5 months
Right.
free, which is pretty good. And
Was that through Xbox? Is that
it was through an iPhone. When I bought an iPhone, they gave me
right.
I think it was a bit weird because Apple give you 3 months and then or a month, I can't remember which, and
Yeah.
then Barclays that do the payment plan on this one offered me
Yeah.
a 5 month one, and I was like, all right, I can't really say no to that. So
Take that one.
yeah, so I went with that one. And initially, I wanted to watch Foundation, which I enjoyed. I really enjoyed. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then I was like, well, what should we watch? And I felt like I had to really give it a chance and pick something. And then everyone has recommended Ted Lasso. You've seen it, haven't you?
I've seen season 1, season 2, and I'm about halfway along in season 3.
Great, you're almost at the same place as me because we
Yeah, and I think I'm on episode 7. Have you seen the whole lot?
I'm basically at the same point. I've got a few more of season 3, and then we're done.
Yeah.
And what I can't say a bad thing about Ted Lasso, to be honest. I was really surprised at both the production of it was so high, so quality, but also such a feel good TV program. And so I've been watching it with my wife like one a night, and then that's it, and occasionally Amy will fall asleep and won't be able to stay up for it. But I've been like, no, let's just watch one. That's all we need to do. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been really good, and I quite like it because although I never lived in Richmond when I was in London, there's a lot of bits from like Chiswick as well, so it sort of feels very familiar. So I love that whole part of London. And yeah, it's just the story's doing really well. So
I think because there's been rumours that Ted's going to be. This is his last season. I don't know. I haven't seen the whole series yet.
my understanding is it gets wrapped up, but
but I wouldn't be surprised if they have a spin-off Roy Kent series.
yeah.
That's what I think might happen because he's one of the writers. Brett Goldstein's one of the writers, isn't he? He's part of the creative
Amy
team. He's
loves
very
him.
good.
Absolutely loves him.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have to go and see him.
Not someone you can't really watch Ted Lasso in front of your kids, can you? It's a problem, but because of the language. But he's very funny, and I expect to see more of him. Yes, now we need to finish it off. We have been enjoying it as well, and by season 3, you're kind of in love with all the characters, aren't you? Really, it's just a well-rounded narrative, well-rounded written bunch of characters that you really enjoy, and you will kind of want to see closure on certain characters towards the end as well.
You do, and I think we've got to that comfortable bit where we've got that connection with all of them, and now we kind of want it to wrap up in a nice way. There isn't anything there's a few plot points that I'm like, yeah, they're going to wrap this up, but apart from that, I'm like, yeah, I think we've covered it now,
Let's. You mentioned Foundation earlier on. Let's just jump to
Yes.
Foundation quickly, since we're still on TV. How much of it have you seen? All of
I've
it.
seen season
so far?
2. Season 1. All of season 1.
Yeah.
I haven't seen season 2 yet. I haven't put Amy through it, so I was waiting for Ted Lasso to finish.
Right. Are you going to make her watch it with you,
well,
or is she choosing to watch it?
No, I think it's going to have to be one that I watch when she's not around because I think it's a little too complicated and too sci-fi for her. So.
I mean, it is hard sci-fi, but have you read the books?
I've read the first one. I didn't get into the second one,
Yeah.
so I've read some of it.
So I've read all of them, and they go places big time.
Okay.
And this TV series is not a word for word.
No, it's not.
Copy of the book. The books are written along I think the late 50s. Asimov wrote the books, and things have changed, and he's changed. Some of the genders, the characters have changed as well for the better, I think. Yeah. But Apple has spent a lot of money on this. It drips Apple capital.
It does. It really does. Looks amazing.
And there is actually I haven't looked at it yet, but I've been told that you can. There's a small featurette actually about the making of it.
Oh, lovely!
From the season,
I'll watch that.
You might want to wait until you've seen the season before you watch it, in case there's any spoilers. But my favourite YouTubers, the Corridor Digital crew, had a couple of the special effects guys from Foundation talking about some of the scenes in it as well and how they made it, which is fascinating. Nice. So yeah, it looks amazing. The story is, I think, it's quite a satisfying adaptation from the books. I think so far. It takes the interesting elements from the story, the kind of the spine of the narrative that works really well, and they've done a twist on it. And I think the acting is very good. The characters are really well formed. It looks amazing. It goes to all the different planets of the Foundation sort of galaxy. Great. It's you're right. It is a bit more cerebral, and I think if you know the books and if you're aware of the history of the books, then you go in knowing that. For a science fiction series, it's quite spiritual, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. There's definitely depth there that surprises you a bit, I think that's what for me that got me into the characters in the TV show, was that they were really well thought out, and even the ones that you want to hate, you still go and get in the depth of like why and that, and I love that because it kind of. It's like a really mature way of handling it. It wasn't, nothing's glossed over, so it's great.
The writing's good because there are kind of some episodic or one episode only storylines that can be like I'm thinking of the in season 1 when Day, which is the younger version of the Three Empire, he has a sort of romantic dalliance, doesn't he? And it all goes horribly wrong. But that builds story for the longer story of it, because Foundation is set over millennia. I mean, we're looking at season to season, hundreds or thousands of years, and so it's quite out there in some respects in terms of how it looks. And but it's if you're a science fiction fan and you have Apple TV Plus, you definitely should be watching this.
Yes. So
I will gloss over because you haven't seen it yet, but Silo is actually another Apple TV Plus production that is very, very good indeed. And it's more like a procedural drama, crime drama, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
With a kind of a mystery box, what the hell is going on plot in general. I think you will like it a lot, and I think Amy will like it a lot as well, because it's less hard sci-fi, more what is going on. Yeah.
I do want to see
and
this.
Questions are answered.
I do want to see this because it's
very, very good.
Good actors in it as well.
Rebecca Ferguson is in it, as well as
Tim Robbins.
Some other. It's got who's the chap from Shawshank Redemption?
Good question.
I forgot his name now. Not Morgan Freeman, the other one. But
sure.
He's in it as well. He's quite famous.
No, Tim Robbins. That's his name. Tim Robbins. That's what it is. Tim Robbins.
Yeah. And it looks brilliant. You'll recognise the actors when you see them. I just can't remember them right now. I'll have to look it up at some point. But again, it's a must. It's on par with Foundation, if not a little bit better in some respects, because it's an easier story to follow. I think it's got the guy from Tenet. Is that Chinasa Uche, the guy who played? Was he the main character in Bennett in Tenet? I think it might be actually.
I think so.
It's got Will Patton, who you'll recognise. And David Oyelowo, I can't say his surname, but he is a British cheap film star. He's been in a fair few things. What's he been in? Like TV series you'll recognise him from. Peter Rabbit 2 he was in.
Oh, right.
No, I'll have to come back to that later on, but you'll recognise him. A very well-known British actor. I've really enjoyed it. And I recommend it, but I don't want to say anything without spoiling it for you, so we'll move on.
Yes, I'll definitely watch it.
Guardians 3.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we haven't caught up on a lot of films, and part of the challenge for us is getting everyone on in the same state where you've watched the film and you can now talk about it. And we're still struggling with that bit because I still haven't seen the new Indy yet, for example.
Sure.
But yeah, Guardians at 3, I think, is one that we've both seen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the thing for me was, we meant to do a podcast, so we didn't get a chance. So, and I really enjoyed the depth of it, and I really enjoyed how emotional you felt by the end of it. I think that
it's quite a dark theme to the film, really.
And James Gunn,
much darker than the first two.
Yeah, he kind of, because he knew it was the last one, and he wanted to wrap it all up, and things had changed since he'd worked on it. So the whole thing's completely changed now. And I feel like he just sort of said, well, look, I'm going to make the film I want to make. And I don't have to worry about, continuity and stuff. And so he kind of made a bit of a love letter to the characters. And I feel like he did really well. Like the second one had some flaws, and I just felt like the third one took some of the problems and went, no, that we can solve that, and we go, and that he managed to show growth in almost every character, which I think shows a good film. It's just like, it's not just plot; it's the characters grew as you looked at them. Even some that were changed out of his control, like Gamora. It kind of he really, you could tell that it was like, this wasn't the Gamora that was planned. But he made it work, and it just so, and there were funny bits, and it was just So I really enjoyed it. There were some really sad bits as well in it, and I just felt like, as you kind of went through as like, how was it as a film? It just felt like I covered all the bases. I felt emotional about stuff, I felt funny about stuff, I laughed, I cried, and then I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. I felt it was very cathartic by the end.
I think it's the best of the three, personally.
Yeah.
It is hard to beat that kind of the initial, oh, this is cool factor of the first film, with the soundtrack and the irreverent humour and the look of it, and the kind of the colours of the film. I do think films are too long these days, and I think there's a certain amount of this film, there's a certain bagginess to it that could have been cut. I think that was where they could shoehorn some of the humour in, and the kind of the quips and the banter between the characters, which a lot of people want. I understand that completely, but I think it could have been slimmed down a bit and just a bit more pace to it. But I really did enjoy, without spoiling too much, the backstories of a certain character in that, which I don't know if you remember. Did the film have? Did the film have a trigger warning or any sort of warning before it started? I feel with certain scenes, and if you are going to see this with your children, listeners, check out the website Common Sense Media, which gives you a rundown of all the different. You can just search for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and it'll give you a rundown of all the content to expect, and any kind of mature themes, which you can read about before you go and see the film. But I think it may have needed a trigger warning for certain elements of it.
Yes.
So I thought that was what made it so emotional, moving.
It's one of those things that I feel the nice things in a way is that films have grown up as we've grown up, which is great at our age. It's like we just happen to be there at the right time. One of the challenges of that is that, like, what would be just a comic book movie now has much deeper themes, and it's much copes with a lot more things than perhaps you're used to, as used to just be a blockbuster with popcorn eating and lots of action and
Superman,
exactly. And I feel like we've lost that a little bit right now. I know it will come back.
The innocence.
I know it will come back, but it's just, it does feel sometimes like there's not mature themes. These are complex emotions and challenges.
Well, I think what it's conveying is that it's now more acceptable to discuss these themes with a younger generation, and perhaps that's for the best. That's for the better, because some of the issues with mental health of young people globally is not being able to convey your thoughts and feelings in an environment that's acceptable for that. Oh, just man up, and now people can, and I think that's why films And you'll get the usual anti-woke lobby who don't like this. They want kids to be kids, and I can understand that completely. I think children should be able to grow up at their own pace, but I think also it's, if you look at the current, I don't know what generation we're in now. It's not Gen X anymore or Gen Z or young people, and my daughter's of that age now, are much more communicative of their feelings to each other than we ever used to be. And films are very different. If a friend of mine, he and his daughter watched The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
And in our day, when we watched The Breakfast Club, the hero was Judd Nelson as this rebel who, overcame his nature of being a rebel and started to make friends and get the girl and so on. Basically he got the girls and he got Molly Ringwald in the end. But when she watched it, all she could focus on were two things: the fact that Judd Nelson was basically sexually harassing her throughout the film, looking up her skirt and so on, which she hated. And when the other character, which is the kind of dweeb, talked about a very difficult scene where he talks about trying to kill himself with a shotgun, and missed, and it became a joke around the high school. Yeah. She's just, this young friend of my friend, this young daughter of my friend, was just absolutely baffled that was not dealt with, that was not addressed amongst the group. Like, this child nearly committed suicide. They glossed over it completely. And so I think the approach to films now, or the attitudes to films, is so different to when we were of the same age.
Yeah.
And so that's probably why things have changed, and it's for the better, I hope, because people can deal with these things now. And discuss them.
Generation Alpha is what you're called Alpha at the moment. Right. If you're born 2010, although again all of these names. Alpha? So that's Gen Z.
So my daughter's Gen Z.
Yeah.
My son's Generation Alpha. So we've gone round.
Yeah, my daughter
is that the end of the alphabet starting again? Is it basically
Gen Alpha? Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, to be honest, I feel like there's a few ones that don't make a lot of sense, like the millennials and that. But I think Baby it's boomers. Just exactly. Technically, this is it. Technically, millennials are Generation Y, which again probably doesn't mean much.
It sounds like we've gone through the entire alphabet and back to A again. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Would you like to talk about Spider-Man?
I would. So, I loved Spider-Man, and having seen this one, initially we had some problems watching it, partly because the cinema, actually there was a fire in the cinema, so we watched the first 40 minutes and then we were shooed out of the cinema while the fire brigade came. No, everyone was fine, and it was just there was a little fire in the projection room.
Was there a little sort of portal to a different universe at the centre of the file, or anything like that fire?
I didn't see any artifacts or anything. Okay. No, exactly. But I did. We were like, I've not had that happen before. What do you do? And then that was fine. The money got refunded, and we went the next week. It was. And then when I watched it again, when I watched it the first time, I think I was in the wrong frame of mind, so I was just annoyed at everything.
Did you watch it from the start again the second time?
Yeah, I watched it from the start again, and I was just in the right frame of mind, and I loved it. So it must have been me. And it's interesting how they kind of take something that was so well done, like the first one. I just feel was like the storyline was wrapped up so well, and yes, they left some bits opening, but it didn't feel like. It didn't feel like there was a cliffhanger that you were just left at. And so I think they took that and then went, right, we can now turn this further up. We can go beyond that. And what was interesting about it was I felt like it worked really well as a film. The only thing is, and this is a slight spoiler, is because it's kind of a two-parter.
Yeah, well, it's part one, isn't it, of the two-parter?
And I wish they'd just be clear about that.
See, we didn't know that when we went in either. So I imagine what you're about to say is, because both myself, my wife, and my son reacted the same way when we saw this at the end, was, what?
Yeah, me too.
The whole audience was like, what? So if you're listening to this, it won't spoil the plot or anything, but this is the first of two films, a bit like the Mission Impossible film. Yes. So go in knowing that there's going to be some sort of cliffhanger for the second part.
I still feel like it really works as a film.
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
And I think that's what I really like about it is I was so emotionally involved by the end of it. That's why I was ended up going, what? You can't.
Yeah.
But I just wish that I'd prepared myself for it because, but I think what they did was very clever. And I think it just, I think it's they've taken how they do things and then they've kept that comic book route. And it just means that like art styles are different in different universes, and they've really made that work and made it their own.
Have you read
it makes
the Spider-Gwen comics?
No, I need to read them.
So I've read the Spider-Gwen comics, and the art style of the comics is exactly her universe. They've basically looked at the comics. Obviously, Marvel and Disney, they're very very meticulous with their canon. And so it was lovely to see that art style in the film and in movement, which they use in the comics. I loved it. That really stuck out for me when I noticed that. Yeah,
it's with the thing is it's not a gimmick. They've done it with such love and attention. It really made you want it made you love comics even if you didn't read the comic.
Well, it's a homage,
and I think that's brilliant.
It's a proper homage.
It was a homage, but it's done so well. And I think that's the thing. If you end up coming out of it going, yes, that's exactly how it should be done.
It's been a massive influence.
It's great.
It's been a massive influence because you're starting to see a move away from kind of the Toy Story effect, where there's sort of CGI is a sort of very similar looking, high quality cartoony CGI of a lot of films, where. I think the latest Puss in Boots film shows that, where they're now looking at developing a more painterly style in their films. And there's a new Disney film coming out called Wish, which is all about wishing upon a star. Now, a lot of people have been very sceptical about the story. I've seen a trailer for it, and it looks very intriguing. And the art style in that is lovely as well. And they've obviously taken on board the impact of the Spider-Verse films and realised what can be done. And I'm not saying they're Oscar baiting here, but it can only be good for us if the art style is much more thought about. I'm with you. I thought the new Spider-Verse film was excellent. I was shocked by the denouement at the end, but that makes me want to watch the next one. I do feel again. I have whenever I take my wife with me to these films, she is the perfect kind of off the street miner's canary in terms of these sort of things. And she did find some aspects of the film quite hard to follow.
Yes.
So, maybe having a fire halfway through and rewatching is a good idea in that you get a bit more time to sort of, cogitate the storyline. I was okay with it. I can see why it could be confusing. And I was quite relieved in some respect because I thought, looking at the trailer, something different happened to what actually happened, if that makes sense. The trailer is a bit misleading in a good way. I enjoyed it more because the trailer made me think something was going to happen that didn't happen. So that's good.
That's right.
We should mention, when you say attention to detail, there was a little bit of a concern about the art team involved in this, in terms of there's quite a unfortunate kind of crunch culture at the studio.
Oh, I see.
Because it was made during the pandemic, and although it is easy to blame the pandemic, which was the official reason for the imposed crunch hours, some of the employers have spoken anonymously to journalists and said actually it was due to several months of work being lost waiting for one of the creators to tinker with the actual storyline of the movie. So it sounds like
that's not
people
ideal.
high up wanted their creative vision to be the way they wanted it, and so a lot of the art and design team had to put work back a few months, and then were told, no, deadline's still the same. So it's we have to be aware that although we're enjoying it and loving it, there were some issues, and we shouldn't be encouraging that, unfortunately. But no, great movie, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Any other thoughts on it before we move on?
No. Honestly, I completely agree with that. I had to explain to a 12-year-old who hadn't seen the first Spider-Verse what was happening, before we went in. So I was
Right.
kind of like, so I just said like, imagine it's comics,
Yeah.
and imagine that it's all about the art style is really important.
Yeah.
So think about that as like another page in
So
a
she hadn't seen
comic.
the first film.
She hadn't seen the first one. We did a screen crush, like
Synopsis.
sums up what you missed in 10 minutes or something. But it's a lot to cover in that period.
See what I watched. We watched it again as a family before we went out to cinema. So we kind of saw them back to back, which is quite nice.
I do feel like actually in the movie does a good job of trying to recap some of those challenges, and so I think it was actually okay. But you're right, it's quite a complicated film, and I think seeing it as a two-parter and seeing it as framed as that would have helped you get ready for it a bit and kind of understand it. I think it'll be a bit like The Hobbit or something, where you'll watch like the first one and you'll be like, kind of, and then you watch the second one and go, that works now. I can understand it.
I mean, we'll watch this again, won't we? You know, when we own the film, we'll watch it on streaming. I need to rewatch all the Lord of the Rings movies. I've been rewatching the John Wick movies, and they're quite long.
Right.
So, I mean, it's it's 139 minutes long, so it's over 2 hours. I'll go back to my comment again. So I watched Moon last night with Sam Rockwell, which is a cracking film. 87 minutes, perfect length for a film for me.
It's so good because it has there's a twist.
Yeah.
And
the twist reveals quite early on as well in the film. It's all how he deals with that twist, which is quite clever.
Yeah. And but what I love about that is that they don't overdo it.
No,
they've got what they needed from it.
It's thoughtful,
and then it gets resolved, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And I like those.
Yeah.
While we're doing movies that we watched, I watched 65.
Yes,
with Adam Driver.
I have seen that. I enjoyed it,
which I really enjoyed. My friend was less complimentary.
Who was?
But I think, he didn't like it.
Who didn't like it?
Just a friend of mine. Oh, just a friend of mine. So
I know Bobby didn't like it.
It's not. No, it's not Bobby.
No.
But I thought it was pretty good. But I think you have to remember that it's basically, and it's also him holding up like a much smaller film than it is. And I think once you remember that, it's fine. I've watched films like that before, and it's okay if that's the case.
I think its nearest comparison film would be the new Prey film, the new Predator film called Prey, which I think did a better job in some respects. But they're both, pandemic films with 2 or 3 people in them. But I enjoyed it completely. Have you seen Barbie yet?
I have. I have seen Barbie.
Shall we talk Barbie?
Are we allowed to do both?
Or should we wait until we've seen Oppenheimer?
Have you seen Oppenheimer?
Not yet. I'm seeing it tomorrow evening.
So I think, in order to give this proper justice, I think we should do a follow-up episode with Barbenheimer, because I honestly feel like the two complement each other very well. We'll talk about whether you watched it in the right order on that episode, because I think that is important.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. We'll talk about it
Barbie,
later.
Yeah.
Enjoy Oppenheimer. It's really good, but we will dissect this properly in the next one.
Spoiler cast. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to our turn section, which turn the pages, which is books. Now, depending on how you listen to books or read books, they're all valid. So I know you're a big fan of audiobooks, aren't you, Alex?
I do, and I listen to them. I listen to them on the way when I'm driving as well. So I do enjoy that, or walking the dog.
I have resubscribed to Audible. Other audiobooks are available, I imagine, mainly because I'm doing a lot more cycling, and I've got myself a pair of Shocks headphones, which lets me listen safely on the roads because they're open ear headphones. So I am finding myself at the moment. I'm currently listening to a book when I'm doing the housework and the washing up, and I am reading books for comfort elsewhere. So, tell me what you've been listening to. Red Moon, which is a classic, isn't it? Red Moon, is that a classic, or am I thinking of one of the Mars books?
I think you're talking about Red Rising,
Yeah.
which is a completely different book, which
Maybe.
is what I thought it was. I was going to be reading,
Okay.
but it's actually quite good. It's like a whodunit, based on the moon. Talks a lot about like what would happen if USA and China basically colonized the moon,
Oh wow.
and
Cool.
how that would work, and what would happen if there was a international incident and stuff like that. So it's actually it's a really good book. I can't really talk about it that much because I'm only a part of the way through it. But I do like the way that they've described things like gravity, the political, how politics and how land ownership works on the moon, because there's like a rule that you're not allowed. You can have something on the moon, but you can't. Basically, you have to use the land. You can't just say this whole area is me.
Yeah.
So what that's meant is that there's been lots of building on the moon, mostly by China in that particular area.
Which this sounds quite realistic as well in some respects.
Yeah, and then what happens is that there's a US outpost which is over at the Chinese end of the moon, and then it all just kind of everything kicks off. But what's nice about it is it feels very grounded and realistic, and like when I'm reading through it, it's quite civil about how it's explaining about how it works.
Yeah.
It's like it's not
quite balanced. You mean?
Yeah, very balanced.
There's no favouritism towards the Chinese or to the Americans in that respect.
No, not really. You do come to it from the Americans' perspective, but it's funny because there's basically a respect between the two, which is quite nice in the current environment. And yeah, it's quite a fascinating read. So I am enjoying it. I just haven't got through it yet.
Okay, I'll add that to my list of want to read by the sounds of it. I think I have heard of it. I think I have read the synopsis before. Now, another book that are you listening to this as well, or are you reading this? Is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet?
So
by Becky
I'm listening to it.
Oh, I love this book.
I've actually I've read it before.
You have,
and the reason that I'm re-listening to it is because this is a book track edition. So that's basically an audiobook that has a music and sound effect track behind it as well.
Well, I might have to listen to it then.
And it's initially I had mixed feelings about it, but I've warmed to it because I think sometimes it can be a bit distracting to have music going on as alongside that. The narrator for this is the same narrator, so they've literally just taken the existing audiobook and then they've put the track behind it, and I think that works. I think one of the things is Becky Chambers has created a really compassionate and thoughtful sort of universe.
Yes.
And I just wanted to go back to it when I started being aware of the book track editions, and then I just started saying, actually, I really fancy that. It's a great environment about thinking what space probably would be like if there were multiple species, and how they would interact. But what I like is that there's still respect between them, and I think we're a long way from that right now. But I do feel like that's the way it would work.
What's interesting about these, so she's written a few books. I have read all of them, I think. So she's got A Closed and Common Orbit, Record of Spaceborne Few. There's the Wayfarer series as well, and I quite like her T-Monk books, which is they're short stories. They're like novellas, Monk and Robot. They're called the Monk and Robot
series. I've not got into that yet, but they're supposed to be good.
The Monk and Robot books are very different to everything else she's done. They have the same theme of happiness, coziness, and respect.
Good.
The Monk and Robot series, you could almost see them as fables, or not fables as such, but stories to teach people how this is the way it should be. This is the way. But I'm with you. I like her sympathetic writing. Her writing is very much character based. If you're expecting a lot of space battles and space robots and laser swords, no, it's very much more about the interactions of the characters within that. Although that's not diminishing it by any respect. The Closed and Common Orbit. I think she wrote that during the pandemic.
Yeah, it feels that way.
Because you've read that as well, have you?
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah,
well.
because it's all set on one planet where they're in lockdown because they can't leave the orbit because I think of a meteor storm or something like that around the planet. So it's quite clever, and it is very much about the relationships between the stranded aliens. They're all parked next to each other in this space park, aren't they? Basically, I thought that was really clever because that really reflected the time that she was writing the book. If you are going to read these, and I'm the kind of person that generally waits until a lot of these books are, and I'm terrible. Buying them when they're 99p on Kindle, but having said that, I think I bought all of these full price. Actually, if I enjoy a book and I know there's a series, I'll get the rest. Now these books aren't like an MC universe; they're not one character into the next. They're very much in the universe, but completely different stories and different people, which is really interesting. I think the Wayfarer ones do sort of carry on, but the rest are very much separate. I mean, I would say they're very open to be televised. These, in some respects, they're quite clever in that respect.
Yeah, I almost feel like they've been written for that.
I can't recommend her enough. She has won a few awards. She did win. I think what is it? What are the science fiction awards called? Novellos? Are they Novello awards? I can't remember what they're called now. She's won a couple of those for the Wayfarers, and her Monk and Robot books. So the first one, A Psalm for the Wild Built, she won as well. I don't know. I don't know if A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is the next one, has come out yet.
Hugo Awards.
That's it. Hugo Awards.
That's it.
For best novellas. I don't know if A Prayer for the Crown Shy has come out yet. If it has, I will buy it. I think it has. I think I may have read it actually. So yes, very good author to follow if you like that. If you like kind of thoughtful, kind, cozy science fiction.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that.
And then you've got a podcast reference here.
Well,
what's the news agent?
It's a bit of a guilt. I'd say it's a bit of guilty pleasure because I don't watch the news.
Right.
But I actually really enjoy politics. And so as I've been doing my commute, I like to have a relevant podcast that I can listen to and hear about what's happening. And basically, this is about a year old now. The News Agents is really good. It's got Emily Maitlis,
I think my wife listens to
John
this.
Sopel,
Lewis Goodall,
and it's on Global. So basically, when they left the BBC, they went to do this podcast, and then basically every weekday there's a new podcast about 5:30 each day, and it covers sort of a few of the main stories of the day, but it covers it in sufficient depth and sufficient thought.
Sorry, I've just seen one of the episodes called "What is the Point of Liz Truss Now?"
Yeah. Oh, it's great. What I like is, they're seasoned reporters. Yeah. They've done this for a long time, and they just tend to just pick the right things, and then they've got the right thinking around stuff. They're obviously skeptical and objective and all of that, and they do try and make sure it's balanced. They will probably have a slant like any podcast is, but what I like is it's like listening to the news, but I don't have to have the really depressing don't have the really depressing articles where it's like, look at all the flooding and
the most recent one is. The most recent one, to be fair, is the climate crisis. Is it already out of control? So that sounds quite depressing.
So, honestly, I listened to it on the way home, and it's a really chilling episode. But what's good about it is that they've covered it in. I really feel like I've learned something from it, and that's the whole point of news is. Like, it isn't just this is happening, so what? It's got to be, well, what does it mean? Why is it important? And it kind of gets beyond the headlines. So I really would recommend it for anyone who wants to keep an eye on current affairs, but doesn't want to be necessarily depressed. There's a fair bit of politics in it as well. So if you don't like politics, don't listen to it. I kind of love all that stuff, so I'm quite into it. But what I would say is it's like they still have an element of trying to keep it accessible for people.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as in depth as
No, but as you say, it's a way of
stuff.
keeping up on news but enjoyably without having to go too deep into the
Yeah,
granular
exactly.
news
And they
stories.
talk through they talk through news articles with an interesting perspective. It's like it's not just like this is what BBC is saying, this is what Guardian's saying. Instead, they've kind of chosen a place, and then they're like, why does this place make sense? And that's useful. That's worth listening to. So.
Oh, I've already followed it.
Yeah.
But I've got a feeling my wife might already listen to it because she does talk about Emily Make This quite a lot. So.
Yeah, that
Good.
makes sense.
Good recommendation, Alex. Thank you. So I've got a couple of series of books that I want to talk about that I have been. Again, I get really into the trilogies, and the Rosewater trilogy. I don't know what I think. What happens is I tend to, as I said before, if Amazon email me, recommend a book, I'll get the first one and then buy the rest at full price. So they've got me. The first one's a lost leader to buy the trilogy. But if I think I like I tend to follow the Verge's science fiction recommendations. They always release about sort of the 20 sci-fi books of the month or something. I'll read those.
Right.
And I read some of the synopses and sort of take my pick, add them to my wish list, and then I think Amazon wait until they pop up and let me know. That's my process. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the Rosewater trilogy is written by Tade Thompson, and he's a Nigerian-British writer. He was born in Britain. Family went to Nigeria in '76, and then he came back and studied psychiatry in the early thousands. And it's, I mean, a few years back, I read a lot of Nnedi Okorafor's books as well. And she did a lot of stories in the Yoruba district and Nigeria and Lagos. So I find that area quite interesting because it's such a vital area of the world. I think it's possibly, I would say, Nigeria could become a world superpower in the future, I think. Looking at the way the economics are working and the age of the working population in the Northern Hemisphere and so on, I think it's going to go places because it's an amazing place. And this series of books is, the premise is that something lands in London in 2012 and burrows into London and nothing comes of it. And then a few years later in 2050, on the outskirts of Nigeria, this vast dome appears.
Right.
And nothing can penetrate it. Every so often, a hole appears in the side, and if you stand near it, all of your ailments are healed.
Oh wow!
And so it's this dome generates a lot of consternation and curiosity, and a kind of a ragtag shanty town starts appearing around the outside of the dome, and that's what's called Rosewater. And the whole series of books are based on this new city forming and the crime syndicates running it and the police force trying to police it. And one of the main characters in the first book, a guy called Caro, Agent Caro, basically the dome emits exudes a fungus called xenoforms, which essentially are airborne spores, but they create like this airborne internet.
Right.
So that I don't want to give too much away, but Caro can he's a sensitive. He can pick up on this fungus more than most people, and so he gives him abilities as a kind of a detective or a policeman, and so he works for the secret branch of this Nigerian government, and it's all about dealing with the anarchy of the town, the crime, things going on, what's going on with the dome, and over the 3 books, you start to understand what's going on within the dome and the ramifications for the planet Earth and so on. The writing's really good, and it's not whimsical. It's pretty, it's again, will make a really good series of films or TV series.
Nice.
With a central kind of crew of characters that are all really interesting. It's very readable, very easily readable from the beginning. And I love the fact it's a different culture, and you learn about the foods and the traditions of the culture as well. It's a bit less. I wouldn't call it Afrofuturism that Nnedi Okorafor calls hers, African futurism novels. It's much more readable and I would say more down to earth in that respect. Nice. But they're really good books, so I've loved those.
Okay,
I can't say enough
I'll
about
add that
them.
to my list.
And then the other books, well, I've not mentioned it on here, but I have mentioned it on here. The other book is FoundrySide. Now, I started off by Robert Jackson Bennett's books. His first trilogy I read, which I won't go into too long, were the Divine Cities trilogy, which are excellent. These aren't books that I would normally. I'm not really into fantasy very much,
Right.
but his books. So the Divine Trilogy books are the City books: City of Stair, City of Blades, and City of Miracles. I'm not going to say too much, but they are really, really good. And they are, again, they feel like procedural detective or crime stories,
Right.
but with a fantasy slant to them and a really likable central character. And I think the style of the FoundrySide books is very similar. You see kind of parallels between the characters and the themes. And I guess if you like the first trilogy, then you'll like the FoundrySide ones. And the FoundrySide books, again, I don't want to give too much away, but when you realise what's going on, he's done such a clever spin on the technology. I use the word technology very loosely here, of these fantasy books. They're very, very clever indeed. Right. How these people in these fantasy worlds have discovered a technology we're familiar with, but with a fantasy slant. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a way of describing it without giving too much. The central character in FoundrySide, she has abilities that she has gained following torture.
Okay.
And it's all to do with what they call scribing. So if you write certain letters on a piece of metal or a mechanical object, you can change its very nature. So it sounds like spells and magic. But when you figure out what it actually refers to, the twist is so clever. And again, she's like a thief, and it starts off with a heist. But and I can see you reading the synopsis now, Alex.
Yeah.
The artifacts kind of open up a mythology that is it based on myth or is it based on reality? It's really cool. I mean, I don't think it's a problem if you read this trilogy first or the Divine Cities trilogy, because they're separate completely, but they're both some of the best trilogies I've ever read. And I'm not a big fantasy reader, which says quite a lot. They're very readable, and you don't have to be a fantasy fan to enjoy them.
Nice.
They're just really, really. I'm listening to FoundrySide via Audible.
You are okay,
and I'm reading another book, a science fiction book at the same time, which I won't talk about now, because I'm trying to kind of. I want to read more. I want to discover more stories, if that makes sense. So, both those books excellent, and very well written. Again.
Okay.
And
that sounds interesting.
The detail in the FoundrySide books, when it hits a certain stage and you realise, that's what's going on, really appeals to me. If that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah.
I think we were going to talk more about other things, but I think we need to wrap it up here, Alex.
Yeah. I think we're probably out of time.
I think we're running out of time. So we were going to have a chat about e-bikes, but I think we might save that for another podcast. Because I'm interested to hear about your Switch, which I almost bought once as well. So let's do the housekeeping. So we've been sort of moving around a bit. Are you still on Twitter?
So I'm lurking on Twitter. We shouldn't be calling it Twitter anymore.
Sorry, was it called now X, isn't it?
It's not to be called X.
Is that
X.com?
What's it going to be called? Sorry, X.com.
X.com. Yeah. You are. It's X. You are Zeeting, which is ridiculous.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no, I'm on that for work because I do actually need to look at it for work, surprisingly. And then you'll find me on Mastodon as well.
Yeah.
Alex Hansford at twit.social.
And I'm John PR Evans at mstdn.social. That's our Mastodon accounts.
We must give a plug to the most recent Bondathon on Tailoring Talks podcast, because both of us were on that, and we've been diligently working through the bonds in order. We have now concluded
Dalton series.
The Dalton years.
Yeah.
I believe that the first Dalton years is going up. Dalton is going up sort of in the next week or two, so it shouldn't
Living Daylights.
Yeah, Living Daylights.
Yeah. So we've been doing this since, or off and on. Our esteemed colleague Bobby, who's obviously not here today, but has his own podcast as well, the Tailoring Talk podcast, and he does a lot of excellent podcasts with a lot of his customers, entrepreneurs, and business owners, but once a month, and that's more to do with their work, and it's more clothing based. But with the Bondathons that we do every month, just once a month, is going through each film, giving our views, rating the films. We do sometimes discuss the clothing on the films, depending on how good the design is. Don't
sometimes
we?
if it's particularly
worth
good.
It. Yeah.
I think it's just what's nice is we get to discuss our favourite bits and like our worst bits as well, which is quite good. And you'll find out how we rate each one of them and how they compare, which is quite good fun.
And so yes, keep an eye out for that. And you'll of your podcast catcher of choice, if you just type in Tailoring Talk and scroll through, you'll find us Bondathons and all the other podcasts that he creates as well.
Yeah, you must listen to it.
Yeah, obviously, you're listening to Play Pause Turn. We are still on Twitter at Play Pause Turn. Do we have a Mastodon for Play
We
Pause
don't
Turn?
have a Mastodon at the moment.
Do we need one? I don't know.
It's because it's Mastodon's more about the people rather than companies. But if you're not sure where to find us, you can go to playpauseturn.show.
Yeah,
and you'll find a list of all of our episodes and links to our socials, and so you can listen to them there if you want.
Awesome, thank you, Alex. Well, I think that's about time we round everything up. So this is, excuse me, this has been Play Pause Turn, and thank you for listening.